Welcome back. Now for the news in detail, we start from the UK, which says it considers the US its closest ally, but does not agree with its stance on Iran. Britain's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt said a small window is still open to keep the 2015 nuclear deal alive. The EU's Foreign Affairs Council met in Brussels to discuss ways to de-escalate tensions in the Gulf. The meeting seeks to convince Iran and the US to initiate a dialogue amid fears of the JCPOA collapse. The Foreign Affairs Minister pressed Tehran to reverse its decision not to comply with parts of the accord.
We consider them our closest ally. We believe the alliance between the UK and the US has been the foundation of global peace and prosperity over the last 75 years. But friends sometimes disagree, and when we do so openly. This is one of the very rare occasions when we do disagree, but that doesn't mean we don't work very closely with them in the pursuit of peace.
Also speaking at the conference, Hunt said Europe had to remain united in its efforts to save the nuclear pact. Now moving on to the United States, which has described Iran's offer to hold talks as a trap similar to the one that led to the 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Washington will not accept terms President Donald Trump believes to be disastrous. This comes after President Hassan Rouhani said Iran is ready to hold negotiations on the pact if the US withdraws unilateral sanctions. Washington has granted a visa to Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif so he can attend a UN meeting this week. This comes after State Department reversed its decision to impose diplomatic and financial curbs on Tehran's top diplomat. China has said it will not do business with US firms involved in selling arms to Taiwan under a recent $2.2 billion deal. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zheng Shuang said no one will be allowed to intervene in China's internal affairs. This comes a day after Chinese military carried out air and naval raids along its southeast coast. The coast is one of the country's most sensitive regions as it faces Taiwan across the narrow strait. Earlier, Beijing threatened the companies with sanctions if they sell military equipment to Taipei. China considers the island a renegade province. Moving on, Turkish forces have killed 8 more Kurdistan Workers' Party militants in a counter-terror operation in northern Iraq. The Defense Ministry says the airstrikes destroyed a weapons cache and shelters used by the PKK in Metina region. The ministry says the raids are part of Operation Claw. It says Turkey will continue to destroy weapons emplacement and shelters used by the terrorists. According to the ministry, a total of 174 Kurdish fighters have been killed in Iraq since May 27th. Ankara says it holds the PKK responsible in the deaths of 40,000 people, including women and children. 10 rebels have been killed in Russian airstrikes in Syria's northwest Hama province. Monitors said Russian warplanes targeted rebel positions in the villages of Al-Zakat and Al-Talmaleh in the north of the province. They said over 2,000 government soldiers and rebel fighters have been killed in intense fighting in Idlib and Hama since April 30th. Now 22 people have been swept to death by flash floods in Pakistan's Neelam Valley. A district commissioner says floods and landslides generated by a monsoon storm also destroyed 150 homes in the area. Witnesses say lightning struck 2 houses and a mosque during the cloudburst. During the storm, 5 passengers were killed and 6 others injured when their jeep plunged into the river Neelam. Officials say rescue operations are underway. 11 miners are trapped in a coal mine after an accident in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. Officials say the men were working 4,000 feet below ground when a short circuit triggered a fire. They say the fire caused the spread of poisonous carbon monoxide gas in the mine. A rescue operation is underway. 12 people, including 11 soldiers, have been killed after a building collapsed in heavy rains in northern India. The Himachal Pradesh state government said 7 more people are feared trapped under the rubble. Rescue officials said 17 soldiers and 11 civilians have been rescued. Monsoon storms and flooding have claimed the lives of 102 people across South Asia over the last 4 days. Nepal has been the worst hit, with flash floods and landslides killing 60 people and injuring 30 others. In northeastern India, officials say at least 14 people have died and over 1 million people have been affected by the flooding. In Bangladesh, 12 people, most of them farmers, have been killed by lightning. In China, 17 people have died in rainstorms sweeping the country. Now, in India's second ever mission to the moon has been postponed because of a technical snag. The Indian Space Research Organization said the launch of Chandrayaan-2 was called off an hour before launch because of safety concerns. India conducted its first lunar mission, Chandrayaan-1, nearly 11 years ago. 4 people have been killed after a train smashed into their car at a level crossing in eastern France. A government official says 4 people on the train were injured. Initial investigations suggest the car drove into the level crossing when the barrier was closed. An investigation into the accident is underway. China is currently battling to save itself from a rising tide of trash. Shanghai alone produces 26,000 tons every day. The city has launched an ambitious recycling program, but there are complications. More in this report.
China is home to 1.4 billion consumers, many of whom are gaining purchasing power. While this may be an economic success, it is also swamping the country in garbage. The issue is straining municipal services nationwide.
We really needed a really big push, and I think the government really realized that, and there's really a sense of urgency to this.
On the 1st of July, Shanghai launched China's most ambitious waste recycling and processing program, but there is confusion over rules as well as fines for infractions.
Of course, it is a bit of a hassle. Sorting waste is a bit inconvenient. For example, when I'm dining at home, the napkin you wipe your mouth with belongs with dry waste. I just put it mix in one bag with leftover bones. That was okay. Now you have to separate them.
Last week, a woman was arrested for assaulting a volunteer over trash disposal related disputes. Despite this, many citizens are standing by the government initiative. China produced only 30 million tons of waste in 1980 compared to 210 million in 2017. The World Bank estimates that the country could produce as much as 500 million tons by 2030.
Meanwhile, Turkey is commemorating the 3rd anniversary of the 2016 coup attempt, with over 15,000 events planned around the country. Ankara says what it calls the terrorist organization Fethullah was behind the attempt, which left 251 people dead. On July 15, 2016, a military faction launched a coordinated operation to topple the government. They attempted to seize key installations in all major cities, including Ankara and Istanbul. President Tayyip Erdogan was detained at his home. He broadcast a video message on social media calling on the nation to rise against the coup. As news spread, citizens left their homes and offices to stop soldiers armed with automatic weapons and tanks. 3 years later, families are still grieving their lost loved ones. The United Nations is calling for more aid to fight the Ebola outbreak in Congo. This comes after the first infection was reported in the eastern city of Goma. UN Humanitarian Chief Mark Lowcock says if greater funding is not received, the disease could claim many more lives. He is calling on UN member states to help end violence in the area after the killing of 2 health workers in an Ebola prevention campaign. The health ministry warned the virus can spread quickly in densely populated areas close to the Rwandan border. Moving on, Germany has called for the formation of an EU coalition of the willing to take in migrants rescued from the Mediterranean. In an interview, Foreign Ministry Heiko Maas asked core EU states to agree on a scheme without waiting for the bloc's approval. Maas proposed a binding quota system for the nations prepared to accept refugees. Later this week, EU Justice and Interior Ministers will hold talks on the worsening migrant crisis. In France, American motorcycle manufacturer Harley-Davidson has organized a festival at the Bulletin ski resort. At least 20,000 vehicles and 60,000 bikers have met up to admire their rides and swap stories. A roaring parade of Harley-Davidson motorcycles with leather-covered bikers is dazzling festival goers. The Morzine Harley Days get-together is just one of the events organized in France by the US bike maker. The company is in the process of diversifying its business by going electrical. The event is rejuvenating the Morzine resort with stands and cafes overflowing with tourists. Dog lovers in Brazil are training their faithful friends to become medical assistant dogs, helping doctors and patients in local hospitals and clinics. Child patients, the elderly, and people with depression are especially fond of the furry bedside helpers. More in this report.
This lovable golden retriever is Juka. 3 years ago, this dog passed a series of tests which qualified her to work in medical institutions. Today, she has a fan following of patients and elderly people who wait for her to visit them every week.
The assessment of medical assistant dogs consists of a series of tests. For example, they should not be frightened by noise and they must be docile and react well to any behavior of the patients, including being suddenly grabbed by them.
All the necessary precautions are taken before a dog is allowed into medical settings. Owners are required to thoroughly clean medical assistance dogs before they can enter a hospital. That's apart from the disinfecting of the animals, which they're required to go through upon reaching a medical facility. Children respond to them particularly well.
We work with medical and nursing teams to see which children are eligible to participate. The selected children can get out of bed and increase their interaction with people around them and participate in the assistant dog activities once a week.
During activities, children can also play the role of doctors and use medical props. The kids can be seen forgetting their own illnesses as they engage with their furry friends. Only 1 in 10 dogs qualifies for medical assistance duty.
China has reported its slowest quarterly growth in 27 years. GDP growth slowed to 6.2% in the second quarter, reflecting the impact of the trade war with the United States. The world's second largest economy grew 6.3% in the first half of the year, in line with economists' expectations. The Statistics Bureau says China's economy faces a complex situation with increasing external uncertainties. The country's stuttering rate of expansion has raised worries about the potential knock-on effects for the global economy. Now, Bitcoin has slumped more than 11% to a 2-week low amid growing fears of a crackdown on cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin fell over 11% to under $9,900 in early European trading, its lowest value since July 2nd. This follows calls by political leaders and financial regulators for greater scrutiny of Facebook's Libra coin amid concerns about consumer protection. Now let's have a look at the weather update across the world. Well, that's all for now. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.